Hi everyone, I am so excited to see you. It is not a coincidence that you and I are sharing this moment right now. Do you know I've been working as a medium for over 25 years, and my eyes are so wide open right now and focused on this deep inner need of an awakening. Like life is consciously connecting to all that is. So I've decided to create the Lighter Side Network, where each show and each host reminds us how the everyday meets the extraordinary. Be it in the realm of mindfulness and healthy living, having an empowered and authentic life with humor, trusting your intuition and communicating with beyond, energy healing and releasing unconscious obstacles, astrology, living in your joy and truth, and so much more. Join us as we share our knowledge and experiences with you. We're going to have so much fun.
Hi everybody, my name is Laura Boone.
Hi, my name is Ursula Lentini.
Hey everyone, I'm Thershna Patel.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Karen.
Join me on my show.
Are you ready?
Only on the Lighter Side Network.
Only on the Lighter Side Network.
The Lighter Side Network, where the everyday meets the extraordinary. That's us.
Welcome everybody to the Real Ethereal Show. I am Laura Boone. I'm your hostess, and today we are going to talk about 4. And when I say the number 4, I'm talking about 4 on the Enneagram. And you'll notice I don't have a guest today, and that is because I am a 4. So I'm going to interview myself today. As you guys know, I love the Enneagram, and I've done a previous show on it with Manira, talking about just all the types in general. If you haven't watched that show, check it out because it really talks about all the types. And basically what the Enneagram is, it's a 9-point system that talks about all the archetypes and how they disintegrate and how they integrate. So it really is a wonderful tool for self-awareness and self-development. And one of my favorite resources for the Enneagram, and I know those of you who watch have seen me talk about this book, but it's called The Wisdom of the Enneagram. It's by Don Richard Rizzo and Russ Hudson. And this is a great book to pick up on Amazon that'll help get you started. They have a test online, you guys, the EnneagramInstitute.com. So you can go on there and find your type. But even if you aren't a 4, or if I'm not talking about your type, it's good to know all the types, because really what the Enneagram is it speaks to different archetypes that are in humanity. So all of us have a little bit of every type in us, and all of us could benefit from learning what the best qualities of every type is. We could all use a little of every number, so to speak. But today I'm going to talk about 4, which is me. And I'm actually, you guys, I'm a 4 with what's called a 3 wing. And we're going to get into a whole show coming up with Manira where we talk about the wings. And the wings are essentially, if you go 1 through 9, it's the number that's on either side of your number. You can lean, they call it leaning into either number. So I lean towards a 3. The other number I could lean towards would be a 5, but typically I lean towards 3. So that's a whole nother show, but it's really interesting to read about that in this book as well. So all the types have a nickname, and the nickname for 4 is the aesthete, the individualist, or the romantic. Those are really the 3 that I hear most often. And I'm going to tell you some famous 4s. I've got a little list I've written up here. Edgar Allan Poe, James Dean, Angelina Jolie, Janis Joplin, Prince, Jim Morrison, Sylvia Plath, Virginia Woolf, oh my gosh, such a 4, Bob Dylan, David Bowie, and one of my favorite representations of a 4, you guys, is Blanche Dubois from Streetcar Named Desire. A lot of times what's really fun is finding these archetypes in literature or movies, because they're all there, you guys. So it's really interesting. Just like Scarface, Al Pacino in Scarface, 8. Scarlett O'Hara, 8. Blanche Dubois, 4. So each type has 3 basic qualities that they motivate out of or that they act out of. So the first is their basic fear, and a 4's basic fear is to have no identity. A 4's basic desire is to find themselves and create an identity from within. So it's still connected with the identity thing. The superego for the 4 is that you have to be okay with yourself. Also, every type has a childhood pattern. And the childhood pattern for 4 is that they feel isolated and that they don't belong. So every type, you guys, whenever you look it up from whatever resource you're pulling from, has a continuum. A lot of times they'll give maybe 10 different stages of development, if you will. But essentially it goes from disintegrated to integrated, every single type. So what that means is when a type is under stress, what types of behaviors do they exhibit? And every single number exhibits a different set of behaviors that are common to them when they are under stress. So disintegrated behaviors of a 4 are self-indulgent activities, being really decadent, being self-absorbed, being really isolated and disassociating from everyone. Self-consciousness, that's a huge one for a disintegrated 4, self-consciousness. The biggest one, I would say, though, because it sort of manifests in many, many different ways, is to be self-destructive. That's one of the worst behaviors that a 4 can exhibit when they are when they are disintegrated. And you'll notice in that list I just read of a lot of these famous 4s, number 1, they're all artists, or a lot of them are. And number 2, wow, half that list, or several of those folks committed suicide, and another group of those folks died really young because they were being self-destructive, whether it be driving too fast or doing drugs. Like a lot of these folks OD'd. A lot of these folks were disassociating or medicating. That's a big thing for a 4. So I'm going to read a quote or a couple of quotes from famous 4s with every type. And these are sayings that a 4 or a number has said that really exemplifies their type. And the first one I'm going to read is Albert Camus, who wrote The Stranger. He's one of my favorite authors, by the way. By the way, all these artists, their 4s, happen to be my favorites. And can you wonder why? I just resonate with them. So this quote is, "After all, perhaps the greatness of art lies in the perpetual tension between beauty and pain, the love of men and the madness of creation, unbearable solitude and the exhausting crowd, rejection and consent." I love that quote. And you know, what Albert Camus is really exemplifying that the 4 does so well is the 4s are really able to live with the yin and the yang together. They are really able to accept and incorporate the darkness as well as the light at the same time. So when they're very actualized, they're really able, and you know, I know friends of mine and when I've been with a 4 that I'm close to, we're really able to hold somebody's flaws as well as see their beauty all at the same time. So a lot of comments I get at times are, you know, I really feel like I can tell you anything. It's not just because I'll listen, but it's because I try not to judge. I mean, we all judge, but I in particular, I don't get shocked very easily by a terrible story or terrible behavior, or, you know, I'm like, yeah, that's how humanity is. But I also don't get shocked by just how amazing people can be. And I think I do try to see the beauty in others where other people can't see it. And I see beauty in what some people may see as ugly, which a lot of these artists I just read their names off, they saw and described such beauty in darkness. You know, their books or their poetry. Edgar Allan Poe is a prime example of a 4 who plumbed the depths of fear and terror and really helped people see that within themselves and helped people understand some of the beauty in it. Like the Raven is so beautiful, and it talks about a lot of the beautiful aspects of sort of a bleakness or a darkness. So he's a perfect example of that. So 4s integrate to the number 2, and they disintegrate to the number 2, and they integrate to the number 1. And every type has a number that they integrate to when they are feeling stressed. In other words, it's a path out of their destructive behaviors. And then they also have a number that they slide towards, whether they're conscious or not. That is a spiral for a number. So I really want to be self-referential here at this part, because, and it's why I've really wanted to do these shows on the Enneagram, because I've said this before, but the Enneagram really truly changed my life. And I, especially as a young person, as a teenager, did not realize I was a 4. I didn't identify that I was a 4. And one of the big indicators of a 4 is the self-consciousness and also the feeling that we're special. And I don't mean that in a narcissistic way. I mean that in almost a derogatory way, where I never felt as if I fit in. I always felt like I was different than everyone. And the childhood pattern, typically you don't relate to either parent. And that didn't mean that I didn't love my parents. I did love my parents. But when I looked around to find an example of what I felt like on the inside, I couldn't find that. So I really did feel like the odd man out wherever I went. And I still do to a certain extent. I feel very different. And I don't really look different. I'm like a blonde, waspy girl that grew up in the South. What's really interesting is that I never felt like what people saw me as. That's such a typical 4 feeling. And what's interesting is that one of the ways of healing when you're a 4 is to realize that feeling like you're separate or feeling like you're so odd that you don't fit in is really kind of a mind game you're playing with yourself. It's not really reality. And one way to heal and become the best 4 you can be is by really stopping when you feel self-conscious, because it can really get away from you. And ask for a mirror from somebody you really care about. Am I really the weird one in this group? Am I really, how do I look today? Do I really look, bad? Or do I really, did I sound weird? And I have to constantly ask that, especially when I was younger. I'm better now that I'm older and more mature, but I really had to lean on other people for anything that had to do with my identity, you guys. So that was a real growth point for me. So another way that 4s need to grow is that, like I said at the beginning, their basic fear is to not have an identity. So what 4s do is they kind of try different identities on. A lot of 4s are actors. A lot of 4s are writers, and they write about different characters, and they really do try on different identities. If I don't know how many of you read my little facts. Jesse, did you read the facts about Laura?
I did.
Okay. So I thought it was funny when I wrote that. Just people were, what? I mean, they couldn't believe all the disparate and crazy different things that were on that list. And trust me, guys, that was the tip of the iceberg for me. I feel like I've had so many identities in this lifetime. And I have been like that since I was little. I mean, I would walk downstairs and have on some crazy outfit, and my parents would be like, what are you doing? And I wanted to look different. I wanted to be different. And quite frankly, identities are like clothes for a 4. They want to try on different identities because they're trying to find their own identity. And a lot of times what trips a 4 up is a 4 will look to their emotions as their indicators of who they are. And that's a big stumbling point for a 4. And when I realized that my emotions are not facts and I stopped leaning on how I feel in a situation and using that as proof as to what is going on, I all of a sudden felt a lot better in my life. I had more functional relationships. And one of the nicknames for a 4 is the intuitive, and I'm also just psychic and intuitive and empathic, which is such a 4 trait, you guys. And it can be such a burden. It can also be your best friend. And I snuggled up to all my emotions, and I knew that I was getting a flood of information all the time from my emotions. So I used that, and it's good to use my intuition as a guide, but there are times where, emotions are like weather. They're not facts, and they pass like weather. They're not, your behavior, especially for a 4, how you act on your emotions is what your character is what your reality is. And one of the big ways to climb out of a 4 hole is to look at your behavior for your identity, not your feelings for your identity. So that was a real big deal for me. So integration goes to 1 when you're a 4. So when a 4 is under stress, they need to start implementing the qualities of a 1. And a 1 is the perfectionist. A 1 is the number that's all about discipline. Well, any 4 will tell you that's like, no. Like, we love freedom. We love being self-indulgent. Like, I need to do what I feel like doing. I don't feel like getting out of bed right now. So I don't want to get out of bed. And 4s are very independent. They are very rebellious. James Dean, look at all these artists I just wrote off. They're all so independent thinkers. We just kind of go our own way. We've gotten so used to feeling separate from the group, we get really used to not having to follow the rules of the group, okay? And 1 follows the rules of the group. That's what a 1 is all about. They want to do everything the right way. They put their emotions aside, and they choose principle and discipline instead of their emotions. So do you see how that works? 4s are so much in their emotions, and they're so self-indulgent, or they just follow their emotions, that they get really far away from just taking principled action. So if you are a 4, if that is your type, or if your child is a 4, or your spouse is a 4, gently remind them when they are disintegrating that they need to have more discipline. And I bucked and kicked when my therapist told me I needed to do that. I was struggling in my life in some ways just because I didn't have enough discipline in my life. And once I started implementing routine, organization, and just, it doesn't matter what I feel like, it's okay that I feel this way, but I'm going to do XYZ regardless of what I feel like. Miracles have happened in my life. I really had such a hard time in my career, especially when I was younger. And it was such a 4 cesspool of what am I going to do and who am I and what should I do? And I could never make a decision. And it really was like a career was me trying on my identity, right? And I was so self-conscious about anything that I tried. And when I finally just said, I'm going to choose to do this and I'm going to stick with it, and whether I feel like doing it or not every day, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to do this. And I started my company essentially in 2004, and that was such a 4 moment in terms of me being an artist, in terms of me being creative, in terms of me being independent and the rebel. So that's all the good 4 qualities that I use to be an entrepreneur. But the reaching for 1 or integrating to 1 was the discipline that I had to apply to running that company, being committed to that company, showing up every day at that company, okay? Putting the needs of that company, which are non-emotional, first instead of my emotional needs at times, So that has flourished because a 4, when they integrate to 1, they're the great creators. They're the artist types or the entrepreneur types that will add the hard work and the discipline to it and the focus and the goals. 2, all that yummy, creative and passionate and inspiration, all that energy. So as much as, if you're a 4, as much as, you might disdain organization and discipline, it actually will set you free. Like taking on responsibility for a 4 and taking on principled action for a 4 will actually set you free and will actually give you a platform to create more and more and more. And I'm a living example of that. So I've just talked about how a 4 integrates, like what's the path out. So let's talk about how a 4 disintegrates. So when a 4 disintegrates or is under a lot of stress, they go to the number 2. And the 2 on the Enneagram is the giver. 2s, in their highest way, in their highest selves, really think about others. They know how to nurture others. They know how to be there for others better than anyone else in the Enneagram. When they are disintegrated, they are, for lack of a better word, codependent. They lose themselves. They don't know where they stop and another person begins. So when a 4 disintegrates, they obviously go into the self-consciousness, they go into the self-destructive tendencies. All of that is really married to a 4 disintegrating. But when a 4 really disintegrates, they will also exhibit what a disintegrated 2 looks like. And I have had moments like that in my life where you start to just desperately reach out or try to merge with or cling to whoever is with you at the time, whether it be a close friend, whether it be a partner. And I was very guilty of that. It was almost when I was at some of the lowest points in my life, and being a 4, I felt hopeless if I lost the person I was closest to. And it was a lot of pressure on that person. So what I'm talking about here is the fact that 2, going to a disintegrated 2 when a 4 is in stress, is really, it looks like a codependent relationship. And it's a merging, if you will, of identity with another person. And see, there's the identity thing again. So 4s really, one of their core issues is all about their identity and not having one or not believing that they have one. So you take on another's identity. And I'm telling you, when I was younger, and in like dating relationships or whatever, when I was under stress, it really, really showed up there. So how does a 4 get out of something like that? Well, they go to 1. And what I learned that I needed to do is take principled action. In other words, take care of myself. Take care of my day. Don't worry so much about where somebody is or what they're doing or what they think of you or that you need to take care of them. That's all too low 2 stuff. It's get up and what are your goals and what are you doing today and what are you going to do for yourself and how are you going to take care of your life? That's what 4s need to do. The other thing that 4s really have a lot of is depression. I mean, you look at this list, my gosh, Virginia Woolf, a lot of these, she has such beautiful writing just about what depression is. And I have suffered with depression a lot of my life, and a lot of people, especially women in my family tree, have suffered with depression. So this was just another layer to the whole 4 thing. And what I found is it's that disciplined action going towards 1. It's getting up when you feel depressed and working out or running or going to the gym or, not going down the rabbit hole of your emotions, right? That was really helpful. I talked about Blanche DuBois being one, Streetcar Named Desire. She was a very disintegrated 4. Anybody who knows that story, Blanche DuBois lived sort of in a fantasy world about what her identity was, right? Who am I? And she tried to project what her identity was to everybody. And, she wanted to latch on to a man and take on his life. So very, very much a disintegrated 4. So we've talked about the integration and we've talked about the disintegration. Now I want to talk about, in closing, what some of the best qualities of 4 are. And, I think the show that I'm doing in general, but the show today is one of the best qualities of a 4. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Number 1, I am putting my self-consciousness aside and sitting here in front of a camera and talking in front of tons of people. And you know what? I'm not worried about it. I'm really not. I mean, I have to put it, I am worried about it, but I put it aside. And it's this constant principled action. I get up and I just go do it. The other great thing that 4s can bring to the world is kind of what I'm trying to represent in the show today. And my gosh, some of these artists here they're such gifts to the world that they've done this. But 4s are able to take their own personal experience and transform it into something that can help other people. And that is one of my goals in life now. I mean, that is one of the reasons why I do the show, is because I feel like if I can self-reveal enough that and have a happy ending to my story, which I really do. I've really, honestly, you guys, climbed out of some pretty deep holes in my life. And I'm not ashamed to say that. And I hope that my story can be an inspiration. And some of these things that I'm talking about were wonderful tools that I had to use to help me climb out of that hole. So my hope as an integrated 4 is that some of you out there can use some of these tools to really help yourself become the better person that you can be. We all have these stumbling blocks. We all have these low moments in our lives. And, I have a successful company now. I have really healthy relationships now. I am not depressed now. I don't act like I didn't not have any money at one point, or that I wasn't in very dysfunctional relationships. I have such a great story from rags to riches and from misery to happiness. And am I happy every day? No. But I am overall pretty ecstatic about everything in my life right now. And it was a process, and it was hard won, and it's a practice that I work on every day. It's not something that I've arrived to. It's something that I've learned some of these skills and tools a lot with the Enneagram. Some of my tools also have been with using astrology and really having these self-aware conversations with myself about what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses. That's all been a part of the toolkit that I use to make my life better and to be happier. And even more importantly than that, it helps people that are around me, my employees, my business partner, my love relationships, my family members. I'm a better person and I'm able to be a better example to them. I'm also able to help them in a really functional way. So just across the board, all the boats have risen in my life because I have really been willing to do the work and really have the discipline to work on when I'm under stress, to be accountable for my part in it and to do the work I need to do to be a better person for myself as well as for other people. So I really hope that you guys will use the Enneagram, will go find your number. I know I've said this on other shows, but I really love the comments. I love having discussions with you guys on the chat boards, especially the Vimeo chat board. I'd be glad to talk with you about this, but I'm going to do all the numbers, you guys. I'm going to go through the entire Enneagram, maybe not in order, but I'm going to go through the entire Enneagram, and I hope it's helpful to all of you. So thank you again for watching my show. I'm really grateful for all of you, and I feel your love, and I appreciate your support. I get it in the comments and all the people that are watching, and I just hope this has helped somebody today, and I can't wait to do this again next time. I've got a lot of great shows coming up. So take care, everybody. Until next time.